Morning and good afternoon to all our attendees, and welcome to today's Enghouse webinar, which is about moving your contact centre from your legacy PBX or telephone system / voice platform to your platform of choice. My name is Barbara Stewart, and I'm on the Enghouse marketing team. I'll be facilitating our webinar today. Before I introduce our speakers, just a couple of housekeeping notes. We will be recording our event, and we'll send the recording and these slides to you after the event. We'll be offering live Q&A at the end of the session, so if you have any questions, please drop them into the question panel as you think of them, and we'll address them all together at the end. So on to our two speakers. I'm delighted to welcome back Peter Verdab, who is a regular panelist for us here in Asia Pacific. Pete has worked with our Enghouse support and engineering teams for both New Zealand and the UK, and we've been very happy to have him back on our APAC team. Before Pete joined Enghouse and accumulated his many years of dedicated contact centre experience, he was a specialist PBX engineer with NEC. So you can see he's the perfect man to cover our topic today. I'm also very pleased to welcome Dennis Gleitzman to join us today. Dennis manages sales for Enghouse in New Zealand and has worked with hundreds of our IT and customer experience professionals over the last 2 years to help them find the best solution for their needs. I'll ask Dennis to take us through a brief introduction to Enghouse for those who are not so familiar with us. Over to you now. Thanks, Dennis.
Well, cheers, Barb, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's great to have you all here today. Look, for anyone new to Enghouse Interactive, I'll start just with a brief introduction to the company. Enghouse Interactive is the largest division of Enghouse Systems Limited, which is made up out of 5 different divisions. In simple terms, we are a publicly traded Canadian-based software and service provider. The wider Enghouse group serves a number of distinct vertical markets through our various divisions, and we're developing and supplying enterprise-oriented software within those different segments. Next slide, Pete. Today we talk about Enghouse Interactive, which is actually the division dedicated to customer experience and CX software. We pride ourselves on having the largest CX portfolio in the industry, and this is thanks to our long-standing history as an acquisition company. Each new acquired product line is integrated into our CX portfolio and further developed to expand our feature sets. Our development teams are based all around the world, and including our communication center or UCB team, which is actually based right here in Australia and in New Zealand. Next slide, Pete. Enghouse solutions fit neatly into the contact center and customer service space, but many of our tools have a wider application for the business, be it our attendant consoles, our recording and quality management software, or workforce management, and of course the big elephant in the room that everyone is talking about, artificial intelligence. On this slide, you see the customer experience functions that are enhanced by our own artificial intelligence suite. We call this Enghouse AI. With Enghouse AI, we focus on designing and delivering solutions that enhance the customer service experience, and we're confident that we can help transform the traditional contact center from a cost to a powerful growth engine. But coming back to the topic of our webinar today, there are 2 primary strategical pieces that I want to share with you. First of all is our history and experience in the industry. Enghouse acquired New Zealand-based Zcom Limited, which entered the contact center space in 1994. So this enables us to have over 30 years of experience in the contact center market. And many of the original Zcom employees are still involved in designing and developing and supporting our communication center product. And in case you are not aware of this, this is the solution that NEC has positioned in Australia and New Zealand as a UCB or UC for Business application. The second aspect I wanted to touch on today is choice. We believe that our customers should have more choices available, and this is more choices than most other vendors actually offer. As an Enghouse customer, you can choose to integrate your Enghouse contact center with a range of voice platforms, And some of our customers even deploy multiple platforms on the different sites. What it means is that as an existing Enghouse customer, if you need to move to a new voice platform, you won't need to purchase a new contact center solution or any new licenses. It also means that you can maintain the contact center with minimal risk. Only the underlying integration is changed and the Enghouse contact center software remains intact. That's allowing them to migrate their contact center from a platform to another, and as well, the staff can retain the tools they are familiar with and love. The whole exercise is designed to be achieved with minimal risk or disruption. And the second important area of choice that we offer is the fact that we support multiple deployment options, from private cloud through to public cloud, and even a mix of both, which we call hybrid. Peter will be talking about all these different options shortly, and I think it's a great time to hand over you to Pete and leave you in Pete's capable hands.
Thanks, Dennis, and thank you for taking time to join today. So what we're looking at are sort of PBX migration options today, and really looking at where most people are sort of, perhaps using on-premise today, where you have perhaps a PBX on site that has a contact center and possibly call recording application that's serving your operators and agents within your estate. Typically, the PSTN is coming in from the outside, so whatever service provider that you might be using, connected sometimes to a session border controller or an SBC as they state, talking to your PBX, and then the PBX, by using APIs, is talking to your contact center that provides the intelligence around that routing to get the calls to the right agent. So typically this is where most people are, where these technologies being housed perhaps within their own IT departments or perhaps within their data centers that the business own. And this is traditionally what we'd call an on-premise technology. Obviously, what we're talking about today is really some of the options that we might move to and possibly clarifying what those options are for you. So you could go for, if you like, a Enghouse cloud option here. Now, there are two different types of clouds. There's what we would refer to more as the multi-tenant cloud, where there is a platform provided for our customers that is shared and used by all customers. It does mean that the data is kept separate and stored in different locations, but it is a shared platform used by many people. However, due to compliance or regulation, sometimes people want a little bit of extra security around their data. They need to ring fence it a little bit more. So we also provide, as part of our choice platform, an Enghouse private cloud where we host an instance specifically for you. That could be within your cloud, within your Azure environment, for example, or Enghouse could actually house that within our own Azure. And obviously, these types of technologies, quite a popular request today is for that to work within the Microsoft Teams world, but not necessarily, but that does seem to be the most popular choice for customers today. Secondly, we've got more of the multi-tenant cloud where you want it more independent from a sort of UC platform, or maybe using a third-party agnostic platform, something more sort of shareware in that UC market there, where the Enghouse Cloud, the multi-tenant platform, can be driven as a standalone contact center, where the voice is driven through a browser, isn't dependent on a telephony endpoint. It contains its own endpoint. The other options are also sort of Enghouse private cloud, where you want to stick with more traditional PBXs. So you might want to still house on-premise technology. There might be some regulations about hosting off-premises. The control of data might be key to you. And we're still working today with traditional vendors like Cisco, Avaya, NEC, and RingCentral in that space, where we can still offer solutions in a traditional format. So even if you wanted to switch between one of these vendors, we still offer the choice. Although the more modern trend is towards the cloud technologies, we do still support that more sort of private cloud hosted by yourself or by us. So when we start to look into these clouds, if we were looking more at the multi-tenant cloud within there are some subtle differences when we get to sort of the integration levels that you're going to get. So for example, here our multi-tenant cloud with Teams, calls can come into either an SBC or perhaps some direct routing that's being done by your carrier. That can be sort of done at the carrier level or by private devices, but your PSTN can come in there. The audio is then forked to send the contact center calls over to the contact center, or it can go through to something like Teams to be delivered straight to a user if you'll just have a back office user, for example. However, the contact center is integrated by SIP to that. So the contact center can take calls, queue the calls within the contact center platform, but then still route the calls through to your agents using a Teams device. Obviously, because you want a little bit of interaction between the contact center and the back office, we also use the Microsoft Teams presence within there so that we can provide the presence of the back office to the contact center. So, you know, when people are available or busy or within a meeting, for example, and that way that helps them do that outreach when they need to as part of their call flows. One of the differences around being SIP integrated to a Teams platform is that you are external to the Microsoft Teams environment. You're not natively integrating at that point. That really means that you need to be sort of mindful that you will require the Teams Enterprise Voice licenses, referred to as the phone system license in some cases, where you have to have a license to provide a DDI for those people. Because the contact center is going to transfer calls into the Teams environment, you do need that sort of public facing number for the people, or an internal number that's routable by the SBC for calls to be delivered through to it. So the multi-tenant clouds tend to be SIP integrated, where we get a little bit difference on the next option, which is our private cloud integration. Now, a private cloud is a dedicated hostable platform, which means that this instance of contact center is deployed specifically for your business, because we're going to dedicate that to integrate purely for your Microsoft Teams tenant. So that will be the only thing that will be touching the tenant, because it has quite a lot of internal controls. We use a dedicated platform to make sure that all the security tick boxes will be ticked for the IT teams. These are traditionally hosted within Azure, and that's not necessarily a requirement for the contact center, because the contact center uses the Graph API, which is effectively a web service to control Microsoft Teams meetings. That could be done by a contact center sitting within any environment. However, when you get into more of a call recording environment, when Microsoft Teams is pushing the call recordings, they only like to keep them within that Azure environment for security. Microsoft don't want to push them outside of that Azure environment. So we do recommend that if you're looking at a private instance, that it would be hosted within your Azure, or alternatively, if you're not ready and don't have the Azure environment, don't worry. Enghouse can provide an Azure environment for you that we mock up, maintain, and manage for you. And that way we can provide the whole end-to-end solution, including the Azure environment will be hosted in for you. So we can offer that as a full service. One of the great values on this is because we're controlling calls within a Teams meeting. So a call would come in, we're placing it into a meeting bridge, and then we're inviting the agent into that call to join the caller and the agent together. When we're inviting people into Teams meetings, we only require the agents or anybody that they're going to transfer through to be a standard Teams user. So that takes away them having that extra license from Microsoft as well. So for larger enterprise organizations, sometimes there's a cost benefit to doing that as well, especially if you're servicing things like reception desks at that point. Obviously, we're talking a little bit more around Teams, as that seems to be sort of quite a go-to for people these days. However, our in-house cloud platform could be used with any PBX within the system. So realistically, we can sort of join the contact center through to a Teams device or into any other platform. This doesn't have to be a Teams cloud. This could be any other Teams or any other UC platform other than Teams that you want to. And the architecture would stay the same. The logic would stay the same that's there, because the contact center really doesn't mind what the endpoint is transferring through to. The Teams integration is just a little bit stronger, where we get the presence information that's there, but we could support this to be connected to any UC platform by SIP, which is a pretty easy standard to set up. So the last sort of option is to sort of stay more within the traditional environment, where you may want to sort of change vendors, maybe from, you know, moving from Cisco to Avaya or Avaya to NEC, for example. If you wanted to change the platform that you want, there is no need to change the architecture as well. This is still supportable architecture for us, because in Enghouse we believe in choice. So we try to minimize the degree of change that you'll need. Effectively, what we'll be changing is not necessarily how your contact center is configured. That will traditionally stay the same. The licenses would also stay the same for the contact center. What we're really talking about is the programming that we do to make the two systems communicate. So we'll just make the contact center talk to the PBX in its new language, if you like, from there. So it just requires the change of the integration, doesn't require the change of licensing, doesn't require the change of traditional architecture. So it makes it quite a nice, easy, smooth change from that perspective. So those are the four options that we can sort of offer into the marketplace, and we do believe in choice. And after doing this for many, many years, we do find that one does not fit all solutions, and that's why we have a multitude. So feel free to come through to us and talk to our consultants, and we'll try and help you make the right choices for your business. If we were to start to tackle and plan a migration in talking to us, really some of the key points that we find that get overlooked within that is sometimes we're talking to people from the business wanting sort of to talk immediately about functionality that's within there. There's a few things that you should consider internally before you approach vendors is to consult your internal security and data management teams there just to see if there's any compliance and regulation that you may need, because some of those options would be cloud-based and some of the data concerns you may have within the business may or may not allow that. So making sure that we can present the options through to you that make sense for the business, rather than getting down a path of a journey to a point where the security teams walk in and say, I'm sorry, that we can't go in that direction. So it's just really about sort of making sure you understand any of those controls you have in place first. The second one is we typically see today IT-led procurement, where sort of IT people are coming in, which they understand technology, and that's all good. But it's really good to consult the internal user groups and what their current sort of functionality is and what their desired functionality is for the future. Because user acceptance is critical for a success of a transition. And basically, you can't get users to buy into a system if they weren't consulted. We find that's a very hard push to do. That you get more problems. It's very easy to procure a system depending on some tick boxes for functionality, but including the business to ask questions during that process means that they feel that they've had more of an elected choice into that, and that will make that deployment go a lot smoother. The last one is around sort of, how you start to procure systems that are there. We do see a lot of tenders coming out there, and I've obviously read many of those. Quite a lot of them there, they tend to sort of ask questions about AI, and they're very general in what they're asking around that. So if you want better feedback and a better understanding of what people are quoting you for, I'd consider going into what we would call a market test or an RFI stage before going into tender. The problems with being a tender is it's a very sort of locked down process where everybody has to ask questions on a portal. The answers will then get shared. You don't get a two-way dialogue going in the same way as you do just having those conversations before. And lots of vendors, including themselves, would always be happy to have those discussions up front to take you through what technology is there, what are the best use cases for it, put you in contact with customers to say, here are people in similar marketplace using this technology, or just people using that technology for you to gather those ideas, as well as take the advice on us as where we see that within the marketplace. So having those open dialogues before you go to tender will help you form your requirements better for a tender so you understand the technologies you could be offered. Also, you might be able to get a good idea around the pricing of those technologies. Some of them might be cost prohibitive if you've got a small contact center versus a large contact center, because obviously price does come into that as well. So we're really sort of recommending that a market test and having those open dialogues before you get into that sort of more of a political tender process. So hopefully that will help out in anyone looking to sort of look at new systems and also complete migrations. Some other things to consider within a migration is the allocation of internal personnel. When you're sort of going through a project, we get asked quite a lot as a vendor, how quickly can we deploy that? And we can obviously react quite quickly. We have very well sort of provision service teams within the APAC region and globally as well. However, it's also a point to recognise that you need the people internally within the business available to complete that project. So consider consulting, as you start to form those project timelines, the availability to the business. A lot of contact centre managers that I've worked with over the years, they have to squeeze in the day-to-day work they do already, and they're very busy people, with also sort of any migration or testing of a new solution that they need to do. Even during the consultative stage as well, it's making that time allocation and making sure it's not happening at the busiest time of year, for example, and making sure the right people are going to be around to make that a success. And that's what we really want at the end of the day. Also, when you're sort of adopting new technology, it's always been best to do that within phases or within waves. So what I've always advised my customers over the years is to look at their sort of day one go live requirements as continuing business as usual, doing something that's more of a like for like transition. And everyone will say, well, if I'm going to do like for like, what's the point in change? But the point in that is to get that settled down, that you're able to still interact with your customers without any disruption, without any negative impact. And when we're actually going to consume that new technology, that's actually going to take time from the business to mesh that technology in with their business processes. So by adopting it in waves, it allows you to sort of settle the business down into any change, then to start to look to make those new introductions, and again being mindful of the time from the internal personnel for them to properly review and make sure that that is a success as that part of the product. Also, if you're going to do any migration or switch to different platforms, make sure that you can have a side-by-side or sandbox environment so that you're not really sort of hoping that that hard cut is going to be a success. Most systems these days can always be built where you have one system running live that you've been using for years. You'd have a secondary system deployed with perhaps some test DDI numbers that are there. That enables you to complete testing to make sure it's a success by doing some role playing, getting the agents familiar with any new technology that's there, and then once you're happy and can tick off that you have got 99% of the way, because you're never going to get 100%, you can then arrange that cut over to divert things like email addresses and telephone numbers to the new platform. And that will always make that success. Always look to put in and provision that side-by-side deployment wherever possible. Even if that's with test DDIs and test email addresses, it just gives everybody the confidence before that go live and means that your sort of success at the end of the day is going to be a lot higher. So obviously we've got some poll questions just for you today. And this is just really a little bit of feedback from us on where you are as sort of customers within the systems. Where are you looking to go? What are you considering? So we've got sort of 5 options for you today, and option number 1 is the simple one. If you're just not sure where you want to go, and that's really why you're joining to look for some information, that will just be option number 1. Option number 2, if you're considering Teams, so if you've decided that as a UC platform, and are you considering that a private platform? Do you have any knowledge that you have any data or concerns around sort of the system being multi-tenanted, and would you like it to go as a private system so it's dedicated to you? Option number 3 is if you're considering Teams with a public cloud, so you want to use a multi-tenant platform that's more attractive to you as a customer. Or, if you're not considering the Teams ones, then we've got option number 4 and option number 5. Option number 4, if you're considering more of that private cloud, if you're looking to transition to perhaps another on-premise PBX within there, or if you're going to go more public cloud where you want an independent contact center, then you may be going to hook that up to another third-party voice platform that's there. So Bob should just be putting those poll questions out to you now, and hopefully we should get some results we can feed back to you. How are we doing with that, Barb?
I'm just waiting for people to put in their choices at the moment, Pete. We're still going.
No problem. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to get that done. There might be a little
Yeah.
bit of thinking required.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We'll just give it a few seconds more. Okay. All right. Okay. Still going. Okay. I think we're done. So I'll tell you where we're looking there. We've got Most of the people, I'm here to tell you, Pete, on this webinar are not sure. We've got 83%, in fact, who are just still thinking about what they're going to do, I believe. And the remainder are considering Teams. So with private cloud, considering Teams with private cloud. So that's where we are today, and I'm sure that more people will be doing some more work, and maybe if you are on this call and you'd like to know more about this, specifically with regard to your own organisation and environment, do just reach out and we can have another chat. Back to you, Pete.
Yeah, sure, and I think that sort of not sure option there, Barb, really sort of confirms that, when we're looking at a tender, if you're not sure of what you want as an end result of that, rather than going into that straight into that tender, feel free to use that sort of more market test environment where you start talking to vendors about what's out there, what the options are. We can help break that technology down for you. Maybe start, probing you for some of the questions on how your business operates, talking to different people within your environment to help sort of slim down those choices for you. But also, cover off, what are the upsides to the different types of clouds that are out there, and even the UC platforms that are there. We don't obviously sell UC platforms directly, things like Teams. We have partners that can do that. So even if you're not sure about those UC platforms that you're wanting to go to, come and talk to us, and we can always find you a safe pair of hands that can help you with that UC side as well. So if you are unsure, need some little bit more information, there will be some contact details for you further on, and feel free to reach through to us and one of our consultants can help. So one of the other topics that we get quite a lot within sort of tender processes is helping you guys understand how these projects and what do these projects really sort of consist of when we start to sort of interact. So once you've made the selection of where you want to go, what do we need to do? If I was to project manage that from a customer side, what would the the onus be on me for? So the first things to make these sort of projects go well is really the first step is the lines of communication. And internally, from yourselves, you need to obviously nominate some IT oversight. And by doing that, you bring in the IT guys to the table very, very quickly if they weren't part of the procurement that's within there. But those guys are going to be able to help, remote access connectivity, especially when we're talking about migrating to things like Teams. There's some work that we will need to do with those guys around Azure as well. So making sure that they're engaged day one and you have a nominated, dedicated person rather than sort of trying to drag people in sort of, mid-project, making sure that they're a part of it. It's also key to nominate some of the business user groups. So I tend to sort of recommend at least one representative from each group, but I would probably say two. And that just gives you a little bit of coverage when it comes down to those grounds. So if you have multiple internal groups, at least try to get one, if not two people from those groups that are a party to the call as well, so everybody's voice is heard. If you get one larger department that's making all the rules for everybody, you might find that later down the line that doesn't sort some of those smaller groups that might have some of those niche ones. So probably try and get people from each group that are there. So one of the very first meetings to sort of get together is to sort of a host between your vendor and the business to have a planning meeting. Sure, everybody understands the requirements. So sometimes, different parts of these groups may not have been included within the buying cycle. They may not be aware what the goals are from within the business there. So it's always very good to start off what I would sort of call a kick-off meeting there to do the introduction. So, names and faces is always good, so you know who you're working with, but also to really sort of lay out within that meeting what the requirements are as an end result and what the goals are, any technologies that are being deployed, what we're going to be doing as far as sort of phases around those as well. So everyone's got a clear understanding of where we're trying to get to and at what speed we're going to be going through that. And this really comes into setting the clear phase goals when introducing new technology. Sometimes, people are saying, I want things and I want it now. Whereas what we're really saying is get the business going on the new platform and then start to bring these technologies in. So really that meeting is about sort of clearing up when new things are going to be brought in and making sure everyone's on the same understanding. If there are any business drivers where that needs to come in sooner rather than later, everything can be clearly understood, and therefore we can all work and agree to the same plan. The other part around the sort of lines of communication, what I've always done when I've done projects, there may be some existing customers that maybe have joined the call today that are listening, and you know that I'm a great fan of having a weekly cadence meeting. And so that's just a really catch up every week that we tend to have with customers during a project. And even some of those weekly meetings are, we get together, we all decide we're all on track, it's all good, we have a little bit of a laugh and a joke sometimes, or discuss the weather, and we move on. But if there is anything that needs to come up or anything that's raised, then that is going to be the opportunity to do that. That just means that everybody understands, are the timelines meeting? Is everything still going well? Is there anything from either side that needs to be sped up or chased up a little bit? Sometimes there are, some processes or policies that you hit sort of internally as you move through, where you may need some, sort of higher oversight or CAB meetings from IT that need to take place. And it's just to make sure that all of those things are stepping through as they should do. It's always good to also have a shared resource plan where all these timelines are accessible by everybody with project items that can be ticked off, so that can be reviewed on a weekly basis just to make sure that nothing is being left behind. So having that list to run through, just maybe a 5-10 minutes just to say everything's on track, or something's been still chased, who owns it, makes that project very clean and very transparent for everybody. So communication is one of the very first keys that we would look for. The next one is around sort of plannings. How much time should I expect to do things? Now, obviously, I'm going to give some suggestions here, but the projects and complexities can vary a little bit. I'm going to give you some sort of high line times that I would probably expect. So when you're sort of setting up new services and systems, I'd probably guesstimate around about a couple of weeks to allow for the build and configuration time. This will be where the techs are putting the technology into place, doing the system acceptance testing, working with your IT teams at that point. And it's good to budget around a couple of weeks for that. Some may be quicker, some may be slightly longer, but 2 weeks is a good sort of guesstimate without knowing the precise project that we'd be working on. The next point is to sort of allocate end user training and testing time. And the end user training here would be for your testers, those sort of power users that we're going to nominate from each of the group, and getting them sort of ready to do their testing so that they can tick off and say that the system is in a good place. And the reason why we do that separate to this training here for the wider group is what we really are trying to achieve in this phase is getting those power users to go through that, making sure any of the niggles or timers that maybe need to be changed or little processes, announcements that might need to be tweaked in a little way, that is all done within this design stage. The worst thing that you can do when deploying new technology is open it up to everybody straight away. If there's changes, these people start to get a little bit dismayed with the project that's there, whereas these people understand that they're more of being the testers, it is going to be tweaked, therefore they're more open to those changes. If these users are being continually changed and then things keep changing all the time, they won't be very positive about that go live. It'll be a case that it needs to be stable before we open it up to the wider group. So I always recommend sort of a 1 to 2 week testing period, making sure that everything is ticked off and the users are completely happy, and then maybe involving the wider group there to do the training pre the go live that's there. The go live is another one that, consulting with the business teams around availability for out of hours. Obviously, there may be good days of the week, bad days of the week. You don't really want to cut over and then have the busiest day of the week the following day. Sometimes that sort of causes a little bit more anxiety within the user groups that's there. So trying to do maybe an evening before, a quiet day the next day to give them some time to be up to speed and comfortable with that. But also it's around sort of the human factor that everybody that's probably working on the product, we all have sort of families, wives, and we might have outside commitments. So really just sort of considering that go live usually does need that out of hours availability, and getting that date sort of penciled in pretty soon within the project allows everybody to work towards that date. Not saying that shouldn't be flexible, but having a sort of timeline around when that should happen. Also, the parts of projects, we always get sort of the go live done and everybody wants to shut the project down. And I know project managers particularly want to get it ticked off so they can move on to the next one. However, I'd always allocate some time for a post go live review. So it's just like those weekly sort of cadence ones, perhaps having 1 to 2 meetings scheduled after the go live there, just in case anything comes up. I know the teams are always there to support you, in the post go live phases that's there. But it's always just making sure that any items that may have been addressed after the go live have been, fully completed. And if there's any other questions or perhaps any more user training that can happen, then that can get scheduled out those meetings. So again, just another touch point, just to say, is everybody happy? It sort of makes that sort of, final go live event feel a little bit more successful and feel that there's still open lines of dialogue. Allocating subsequent phases for new technology is also another good one that, when you are doing that planning, is to have your sort of initial phase one planned out there, but also have it sort of earmarked in when's that next phase going to come in there, just so it's in everybody's diary that's there, doesn't get lost off any of the agenda. And we make sure that, you have the same type of formats we're talking around here for, the planning phases and also the communication phases, so that you have a kick-off meeting again for the new technology, and then you're moving through that same sort of dialogue phases around that expectation. So when you are introducing that new technology, it's making sure you've got the right staff around. So some of the technology may require some IT involvement. Perhaps you're bringing on web chat or web bots. You might need someone from IT that understands firewalls, for example, or perhaps somebody from the web development team that's there. So also sort of understanding that technology and who's going to be required within the business is something key to make sure that that's a success there. It's also, when you're doing the new technology, it's not like putting in what you're using on a day-to-day basis now. You can quite easily take a configuration from any contact center, overlay that into a new system, and that will blend quite easily within there. However, if you bring in new technology, you need to take time sometimes to evaluate and reimagine the technology where needed. What I mean by reimagine the technology, you start finding out things that you may not have asked before. When you start applying that technology within your business processes, you might find that you might need to rethink how that blends with that particular business process, or does that business process need to adjust to understand that that technology is going to come into place? It might replace some of those elements of that business process. It could enhance it in certain ways. So it's about, trying to blend that with your working environment today and the flows that you use within the business. So hopefully that's helped you today around a little bit around sort of migrating, and sort of gets you a little bit thinking about how those projects interact, who you might need to bring to the table, and that communication is key principle. So really, if we're looking at the migration, what really makes our success factors is stakeholder engagement. If we don't have the buy-in from the business to succeed with a project, that engagement, if they're not included immediately, that is harder to achieve as an end result. People don't feel like they want to use technology that's being pushed on them. If they've been engaged with it, then obviously they'll be more of a fan of it moving forward. The communication there to make sure that the project stays on track, everyone understands their responsibilities is key. Continuous training and support is also good. There is going to be a change for the users. Some people do get apprehensive about that and feeling that one training session might be good for most people, but having other mop-up sessions just in case there's someone that's slightly a little bit more nervous or slightly slower to pick up on the newer technologies that are there. It's always about continued training, supporting everybody, and some of those needs may be different. Iterative improvement as well. It's about sort of phasing in technology there and growing it. You're really sort of, going to be going on a journey with technology. Technology is ever changing. It has done in my 25 years in the contact center marketplace. And what we really need to do is to keep progressing that change and not be frightened to roll that into phases around that, and to have goals for each of those phases, because as you learn about those technologies, that might adjust how you're going to happen in your second or third phases, because you learn as you go a little bit more. We can try and tell you everything technology can do, but blending it in with how your business operates is always a little bit different. So sometimes there's being prepared to improve as you go is also, and being open. Some of the pitfalls to avoid it really is to underestimate the change management required within that. So there are a lot of processes within businesses around sort of not only IT change management, but also within the business there might be certain policies, procedures, and actions that the agents take within there. And understanding as you bring new things into the table that some of those may need to be changed and being open to new ideas realistically. You have worked a certain way for everyone, but sometimes technology challenges should you continue to work in that way. And just being open at that point. Setting unrealistic expectations. Again, this is more about sort of, you may have been a voice contact center. Suddenly you want to be a full multimedia with chatbots and AI in place that's there. Trying to bring too much in day one is a little bit unrealistic, and therefore being open to sort of, having those expectations of growing that technology within the business rather than sort of creating a monster project, if you like. Be careful not to, ignore things like your data privacy around that as well. So if you are within a regulated environment, make sure that you understand what you can or can't do with your data. There's quite a lot of things that are happening legally within Australia, for example, around data sovereignty, about keeping that within a certain region. But there might be other things that apply to your business as well. So try to, be quite open within the business that you're looking to procure technology, and listen to the people that control data, or the policies around data, just around what those options may be limiting for you. The other sort of, the last one is people really make projects a success. The technology is there to do its thing, but really the right people are what are going to make your project a success. So if we don't bring the right people in there, then obviously those projects will go well. If you're not prepping up the IT teams to get them to dedicate a resource to you so that you have somebody as the voice of IT for you, for example, if you try to bring them in midway through the project, things get a little bit sort of delayed, or possibly, it might be, conflicting with other things they're doing within the business. But also, bringing in your stakeholders from your contact center as well. So if you're in the IT world, do not ignore the user group. Just make sure you bring them in inclusive, because that engagement is going to make it a success. So hopefully that sort of simplifies some of those statements I was making before there, and just put that into some nice bullet points for you. So just a last reminder around sort of talking to us. We are more than happy at Enghouse for those, and there was a majority of people listening today that weren't sure in the direction they're going to travel to. Enghouse are more than happy. We do, what we refer to as consultative work with our customers, and also people that are potentially just looking at new technologies within there. That isn't a chargeable exercise at all from us. We do have consultants around that will spend a couple of hours on the phone with you, demonstrate technologies for you, discuss about how you within your business work, what you're using today, what you see your future as. We can also talk to you, we're all experienced consultants. I'm at 25 years, and Chad, who's one of my counterparts in the APAC region, he's probably just as long as me within the business. Therefore, we have met a lot of customers, used a lot of different technologies out that way. And sometimes the advice we might give you is a little bit surprising, that, there may be other things out in the marketplace, like CRMs and those sorts of things, that may do a better job than the contact center. So we are familiar around different things, different ways of working with the business. So don't be worried about getting in touch and feeling obligated in any way, shape or form. We enjoy just having a dialogue with you. So I'm just going to hand you back over to Barbara for a few minutes. Barbara's got some useful information for you. And Barbara, if you just want to take me through that for you.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks for that. Everybody, if you have any questions that you'd like to air on this webinar, then please do drop them into the question pane now, and we'll go through them at the end. We've just got a couple so far, but happy to take some more. We've got a bit of time for that. On this slide, we've just got a list of the resources. When we send out the resources after the webinar, it'll include our slide deck, which will have the slide on it with links to these various assets. So if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to visit our website, we do have a number of industry reports, including local ones, on our website that you'll find with that link. We have a selection of brochures for different product lines. So if you look for something in particular and can't find it, please just get in touch. And we've got video and some case studies. So please do just reach out if you need anything. And Also, I wanted to say before we go into the questions that we do have a survey just on exiting the webinar. If you wouldn't mind just answering a couple of questions, just to give us some orientation on the value of this, so that we know for next time. And we'd just be happy to hear from you. Thank you. So, any questions, Pete, if you want to just jump to the next slide. So we've just got a couple of questions so far. First one is there a big feature difference between the Enghouse contact centres that are used for the different platforms?
So having done contact centers for many years across many different sort of PBX types, and whether it's sort of the private ones or the cloud one, there's always a standard feature set across those PBXs, but there are going to be the occasional sort of feature difference that even between, if you think of those UC platforms, if I was to perhaps swap an NEC for a Cisco, for example, there'll be slight feature differences between there. But the differences aren't huge. So, what is important to a contact center is calls coming into the environment, probably getting announcements, getting music on hold, being delivered to the right agent. All of those features are standard across any platform, regardless of any UC environment it's going to be integrated into. Features like callback are always standard within there as well. Being able to do things like call recordings is always standard. There might be some sort of niche features around sort of, parking can be one that might be different. There were things that you could do perhaps in the traditional PBXs like the NECs and the Cisco's, like using paging systems, for example, and we could do that from an operator, maybe page everybody that the sandwich truck was here. Whereas you won't find those more on those sort of cloud UC platforms like Microsoft Teams, because they don't really integrate with paging systems. They move more to a separate paging system. So there are slight differences that are there, but they tend to be more niche features than anything that you would consider core contact center functionality.
Okay, thanks, Pete. And the other question that we've got, um, how different is the provisioning between the platforms? So, for instance, voice, hardware or software or enablement.
So typically, if we were integrating to sort of the traditional PBXs, they all really work in the same way. They call things different things. So I've spent many of 25 years learning different languages for different vendors on what NEC would call it versus what Cisco would call it. But they all have the standard principle that they use an API, a code language to talk between the PBX and the contact center, so that we can control that environment and route calls and play announcements, for example, between them. So they work very much the same. They use slightly different language, but the integration methods are pretty the same. So each of those projects, regardless, would be the same sort of time to provision around there. When we start moving to more the cloud sectors that are there, the provisioning times are usually on par. The time it takes to program things is around about the same time, because we're still talking about sort of doing the same configuration and enabling the same feature sets that are there. So that sort of generalization around the sort of times that I gave before would be regardless of whether it was a sort of traditional on-premise PBX or a cloud PBX that we were integrating to. Those sort of time frames to set those contact centers up are the same. So again, the choice is really more about where you want to be as a business around using a multi-tenant platform versus a private platform. Differentiators aren't really feature set to a degree. They're not realistically around sort of times to do them. They're all deliverable in the same time frames. Really, the question comes around sort of control of data and also sometimes the control of systems. So things like multi-tenant platforms, when they're upgraded, you normally get sort of, here's the time and date where the upgrade is going to be performed. And because everybody's using it, it's very hard for any vendor to jostle what times that's going to be done. But if I've got a privately hosted system, for example, I can decide that's not a good time for me and arrange, particularly with the vendor, when should that upgrade happen? Or are we even ready for that upgrade? So, in the times where the browser wars were around, where IE was falling off and Edge and Chrome were emerging more, if you were sort of stuck to one technology for other reasons in the business, and perhaps if you're migrating a cloud, for example, it works within a browser, you've got to be able to control in a private way what version of software that you're using and what that supportability is. So you can move forward as quickly as you want, or you can sort of hang back a little bit if there are things within your business that do require you to do that. So it's more about sort of control rather than sort of feature set.
Excellent. Thank you, Pete. And
No
I
problem.
can see that all the people who joined us at the beginning are still with us. So I think that the reason we haven't got any more questions is that you've addressed this very thoroughly. Thank you.
And I haven't
So,
and I haven't scared them off either, Bob. So we're winning today.
correct. Even Dennis didn't. Yes. So thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you for your time. And we look forward to your response on the exit survey and any questions that you have for us as a follow up. Um, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks for your time, all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.